This property line is non-negotiable.
The surveyor's report says otherwise.
That document is completely invalid. This agreement is completely binding, Daniel. You have no legal right to be on this property.
I think we are done here, Victoria.
Victoria arrived claiming I had no right to remain on my own family property. She called me a squatter, completely unaware of who she was speaking to. The HOA had spent weeks insisting that my property somehow belonged under their neighborhood rules. That morning, Victoria arrived expecting me to surrender without a fight. My family had held documented rights to the property under a 99-year agreement. I had brought the original paperwork because I knew this confrontation was coming. Then several sheriff vehicles appeared at the end of the driveway. Victoria suddenly stopped talking and turned toward the approaching deputies. Sheriff Mason walked straight past Victoria and looked at me. "Morning, Judge," he said, and Victoria's expression changed instantly. Victoria had assumed I was some ordinary homeowner. She could intimidate. She was beginning to realize that the sheriff knew me personally. Sheriff Mason asked me what had happened. I handed him the documents and let the paperwork speak for itself. The sheriff examined the agreement, the property records, and the boundary documents. The more he read, the quieter Victoria became. The real issue was the property boundary. The HOA neighborhood ended well before my family property began. I showed them the official survey showing exactly where the HOA boundary ended. There was no mystery once the lines were placed on the map. Victoria searched through her paperwork for something that could contradict the survey. She couldn't find anything. Even one of Victoria's own board members started questioning the decision. He quietly asked why the HOA had sent everyone there without verifying the boundary records. I never raised my voice. After years in courtrooms, I knew that calm facts usually outlast loud accusations. Sheriff Mason explained that the HOA could not simply declare my family property part of their association. If they believed otherwise, they needed proper documentation. For the first time that morning, Victoria stopped arguing. She finally admitted that the HOA may have misunderstood the property records. This wasn't just land to me. My family had built its life here long before the surrounding subdivision ever existed. That evening, I looked through the old photographs my family had preserved. Every picture reminded me why protecting the property mattered. The HOA board scheduled a formal meeting to review what had happened. This time, everyone was prepared to look at the actual records. I placed the original agreement on the table. The room became completely silent as the board examined the document. The survey made the situation simple. My property was outside the HOA's jurisdiction. Victoria finally apologized for calling me a squatter. I accepted the apology, but I also made it clear that the mistake should never happen again. The board corrected its records and documented that my property was outside the HOA boundary. The accusation against me was officially withdrawn. A few days later, everything was quiet again. For the first time in weeks, I could look across the property without seeing an HOA vehicle. Sheriff Mason stopped by later that week. He smiled and said, "Looks like your property is finally getting some peace, Judge." I looked across the land my family had protected for generations. The lesson wasn't about winning an argument. It was about knowing your rights and keeping your record straight. Victoria eventually drove away without another confrontation. The next time the HOA needed answers, they knew to check the records first. The farmhouse remained exactly where it had always been. My family property was still my family's property, and this time everyone understood why. Sometimes the strongest response isn't shouting. It is knowing the facts and standing your ground. If you enjoyed this HOA story, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from.